as always, you know us. We have more fun talking about the shittiest movie of the year, so we're going to start from the best because that'll be the shit we have the least to talk about.
We're
going to talk about how they're
movies.
good.
Oh fuck, we forgot
A little bit.
We forgot to place Nosferatu too.
Alright, Aiden, when you edit this will be cut out from here. Cut. Alright, everybody, and with that, we've fixed our error. So, Aiden, what is our favoritist movie of the year?
The favoritist movie of the year, The Bike Riders. It's a nice movie. It's original. It's a very Midwestern movie about Midwestern-ass losers doing Midwestern-ass loser things.
Tom Hardy looks like he was smoking his Juul front to back.
he was smashing at a.
He was smoking. He was hitting the Elf bar.
The little Elf bar. He was just like.
His assistant. He'd start snapping at his assistant, not saying his or her name, He's just snapping at him until
an
they
Elf
come
bar
out.
and a beer.
And he's like, I literally just hit this Elf bar. And then they're like going into their Tom Hardy utility belt trying to find an Elf bar flavor that'll satisfy their master.
Yeah.
He is the modern he's the modern Marlon Brando. As you can tell, we have been drinking a little bit.
It's something that needs to happen for this video.
Number 2, Nosferatu. Recent watch. It's Horny Dracula. The video just came out, so I'm not going to talk in too much detail, but I liked it because it kind of felt like a natural, modern progression on like the Universal Monsters or early Gothic horror cycle. It's quaint, but it's also over the top occasionally, and I really liked it for those reasons.
Number 3, Furiosa Mad Max Saga. George Miller's somehow still at it. It's another incredible action movie. I think perhaps not to the highs of Fury Road, but he did it again. He keeps doing it.
Yeah. He'll be 175 when he makes Mad Max 45. Not 45, like number 5. Next up is Dune Part 2. It is the sequel to Dune Part 1. Dune Part 1 was a decent movie with a lot of setup. Dune Part 2 is the good half of the book.
Yep.
Or the more exciting half. Watching it tangentially as one big film, you understand what they were doing. But Part 1 was so much setup that you kind of had the problem where it's like, will they stick the landing, so to speak? Denis Villeneuve managed to create an epic. My only problem with ranking this movie higher is that kind of the eternal problem of multi-part movies, especially good multi-part movies, or ones that don't really stand on their own. It's a story, it's half of a movie.
Yep.
It is a very good half. It is a very good second and third act to Dune, after a very prolonged first act that came out, 4 years before?
Yep.
But regardless, it was a good time. And, really liked it.
I'm very excited for Dune Messiah. Number 5, Beetlejuice. Tim Burton has finally gotten his mojo back after the shitty Alice in Wonderland movies. It's not a CGI nightmare. It's just goofy, wacky Tim Burton fun. And my only criticism is that Willem Dafoe should have been in literally every scene.
Yeah, Tim Burton tried to advance his style for multiple years. The problem is, as Tim Burton advanced his style, it turned out his style kind of sucked and he should have just kept doing what he was doing. And he went back to doing what he was doing and proved that he could indeed do what he was doing before, still very well. There's a lot going on in the third act, but regardless, it's so much fun that I don't care that much that the third act is a definitive mess.
Yep.
Next we have Heretic. 2 girls go into a religious man's house, or a guy who wants to convince them of prophets falsely, and they get in philosophical arguments while creepy shit happens.
The autistic man shows off his
Monopoly
hobby.
collection.
Shows off his hobby.
He got so into Monopoly he decided to start murdering religious people. Anyways, I thought it was a very good movie. I liked that Topher Grace cameoed for no reason. The first
Sure
step
did.
of his comeback tour into like a nostalgia actor. Like I feel like he's gonna have like something of a Brendan Fraser like resurgence where people are like, "Fuck yeah, it's Topher Grace." Everyone hated on him
The
because he
Topher
was.
Renaissance.
Well, the thing was, Topher was the asshole for being the lame that '70s show guy that didn't want to party and shit. But it turns out Danny Masterson was a rape and pedophile, and Ashton Kutcher was raped by Diddy so hard that he became a pedophile.
Yep.
Topher Grace came out on top. Everyone loves him again. Everyone wants to apologize for how we treated him. So he's getting his own renaissance a la Brendan Fraser. And I'm happy for the guy.
Number 7, Abigail. Connor didn't see Abigail. I talked about it briefly in one of the drunk views. It's very fun. It's charming. It's cute. It's a interesting little horror movie, vampire movie with a twist. It's by the guy who made that other one. I can't remember right now. But it's fun. It's a very fun, gory, silly, over the top vampire romp with a little girl. It's fun.
Next up, we got Gladiator 2. Ridley Scott comes back to do more Gladiator. It's
Yeah.
basically the Gladiator Force Awakens. But
But it's got Denzel in it.
it's got Denzel in it. It's got two guys that look like Ariana Grande's SpongeBob boyfriend. But they're both really weird Joaquin Phoenix people from the first movie. Not quite as good as the first movie.
It's a lot
But
more stupid.
I think Ridley
It's a
Scott.
fun one.
It's a relatively fun movie, which I appreciate. Like I feel like sometimes the concept outweighs the fun for Ridley Scott, but they didn't do that here. It was good.
Number 9 is The Fall Guy. Despite being by the Deadpool guy, it's a charming little action, light comedy spectacle movie.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling is charming, and it's just a nice movie about a guy in over his head doing some cool action things. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it is a fun entry in a genre we don't see anymore very much, of like light comedy action hybrid in the vein of like a kind of like a Rush Hour. Not
Yeah.
exactly like a Rush Hour leads a little more comedy, but it's a similar tone.
It's not a total John Wick clone. It does have good action. I thought it was fun. It's probably the most easy watch of the year that's both easy to watch and enjoyable.
Yep.
Not the greatest movie of all time, but one I can see myself revisiting here and there because it's a good time. Next up, we have Alien Romulus. Back to basics with Alien. Something that hasn't been basic in a long time. It's kind of a sci-fi alien lore movie, but not as much like lore dumpy as something
Prometheus
like
and-
Prometheus or Alien Covenant.
Yeah.
It just kind of has the alien backdrop. It's sort of like the Rogue One of Alien, where it takes place immediately before Alien
Yeah.
type of thing. And it has aspects that I don't love and aspects that I thought worked pretty well. And together, and especially visually, I think the movie worked
Visually, it's
very well. And I think it is a step in the right direction for Alien, even if it's not the slam dunk that Alien and Aliens were back in the day.
11 is Civil War. It is a movie that surprisingly dodges being a cringy political allegory on either side.
It tries very hard to just kind of...
It maybe to its own detriment remains very vague and neutral, but it does have, it's a very pretty movie. It has some very good action, and it follows, it's kind of like a jumble of different little scenarios, and a lot of those scenarios are fun enough to make it worth watching. It's a very interesting, if a little flawed, little movie.
Yep. Next up, we have Watchmen, Part 1 and 2. This will just be bundled together. DC Animated Universe made a 2-part Watchmen adaptation. It is very direct.
Yep.
The style was designed to get the colors and drawings of Dave Gibbons and the whole crew really well.
Yep.
They did not want to deviate at all. They made a screenplay that was virtually one for one.
Yep.
They really tried to make a faithful adaptation. I think the detriment with Zack Snyder's Watchmen, which was also a pretty close adaptation to the original comics, minus a couple elements, was that it felt like Zack Snyder didn't understand it, or if he did fully understand Watchmen, he was trying to interject stuff that was more to his sensibilities or he thought would be cool.
Yeah.
Like right after the scene where, I mean, I've talked about this in the video too, but like, you know, he would have like sound of silence at the comedian's funeral right after he's seen raping someone.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of nuance to Zack Snyder's take, despite it being one for one.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder is fighting to make me hate a very good comic book that he was tasked with, frankly, one for one adapting, and he more or less failed. But this is very much like, we're not going to touch it. We're going to make it a style that is cheap, but also does a good job of recreating Dave Gibbons' artwork. And we are going to make a movie adaptation of Watchmen as close as humanly possible to the original comic. And that's what they did, and they did a pretty good job at it. But as a result of that, I didn't want to really have it ranked higher just because, well, it's a fantastic adaptation. A lot of the credit still kind of goes to what Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons did 40 years ago.
Yep.
And I give the filmmakers a lot of credit for adapting it well, but I don't want to be like number one Watchmen, because I really like the comic and they did a great job copy pasting it into a movie.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of effort, but we're not going to give it number.
At number 13, we pass into the trash Kino.
Yep.
And at the top of that pile is Twisters. It is objectively stupid as hell. The movie presents tornadoes as
Supervillains.
evil supervillains that maliciously hunt people down. And
The character wants revenge on the hurricanes or on the tornadoes.
there's scene after scene of our hunky cowboy protagonist taking off his shirt and flexing at the evil tornadoes.
Well, he listens to pop country in his lifted truck. He's like, I could put down my super anchors so we can experience the inside of a tornado.
It's the stupidest movie ever made, and it's honestly so much fun.
I feel like it's so ideal to be a Glenn Powell vessel, because like you get the vibe from him. It's like, I hope I'm wrong.
handsome,
Like I would
ripped man
love.
with 75 IQ.
He's 75 IQ, handsome, ripped guy who has charisma, but I mean, he might prove us wrong one day. But right now, I don't see him starring in
Glenn Powell gives off the
groundbreaking
energy of that episode of Malcolm in the Middle where Hal befriends the bodybuilders and they're all stupid and he does their taxes for him, so they carry him around on a throne.
They love him. Yep. He's one of Hal's bodybuilders.
He's one of Hal's bodybuilders, and this is the perfect movie for him. It is stupid.
It is like
and
the
fun.
ideal vessel. Like he's like, come on, let's have a little fun with Twisters today, shall we? And then he puts on some pop country in his lifted truck and jumps over a dirt mound into a tornado. Like, it's awesome. I love it. On a similar vein, we have Bad Boys Ride or Die, which is Top Gun, it is Furious 7 Core. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. The first movie, kind of boring, kind of took itself too seriously.
Yeah.
They wanted to kind of had to strip back the level of Michael Bay-ness, because no one can do what Michael Bay does.
Yep.
For better or for worse, no one can do what Michael Bay does. And the first movie, as a result, ended up boring. But what they realized they could do is they could earnestly make something really fucking stupid that's only intention is to entertain you,
Yeah.
like Furious 7.
Yep.
And they did a pretty good job at it, so I would say it is the Furious 7 core film of the year. And for that, I didn't hate it, despite it being pretty fucking stupid. Will Smith's son is like a fucking serial killer who joins the team, and they're all happy,
just like
and they're
Furious
having
7.
fun, and they're hugging each other.
Every Fast and Furious movie, the previous
the villain from the third Bad Boys becomes a hero in this one, and he gets redeemed, and then because they have to redeem him because they're simply a more evil villain. So they're like, well, who else can we call? And they're like, I guess this fucking convicted felon who has like 14 homicides and like serious threats of terrorism, like a foiled terrorist plot of like blowing up a nuke in the middle of Miami. They're like, well, there's some guy who wants to kill people, you know? So maybe, but he's also like he's my family.
They can share they can share some Coronas around the picnic table.
Yeah, it's
all
very
forgiven.
It is very Furious 7 for
Number 15, speaking of stupid, is M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. It is a high-concept thriller about a serial killer trapped at a Taylor Swift concert. It's very fun and silly, and I think intentionally so. I think there was an element of knowing to this movie where M. Night Shyamalan was kind of just goofing off and having a good time with it. And it really works. It's fun. It's a bit stupid, but the premise is very exciting. And it's arguably its weak point is its third act, where it moves away from its core gimmick. It's still a pretty good time, though.
The Apprentice is the Orange Man Bad movie. That doesn't really want to overtly do that. I think some filmmakers at least, are smart enough at this point to say, if I make a very frank, like, Jimmy Kimmel monologue Orange Man Bad movie, I'm going to look stupid, and I'm going to look like I'm just doing what everyone else has done that ever super played out, no one cares anymore.
Yep.
So what this director did is, I mean, I would be shocked if he was a fan of Donald Trump, but he tried to make a fairly unbiased, like, here's a look at Donald Trump's rise through the industry world into how did he become a tycoon, and it kind of shows this figure in his life that he modeled a lot of his kind of mannerisms and attitudes through, and how he basically became from kind of a naive young guy with a decently well off, but not like uber rich parents, and how he kind of moves that and gains political influence. And it is kind of a fascinating movie, to be honest, but there are levels of hokiness. I think like Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan were both really good in it.
Yep.
And I think,
most of the supporting cast, not as much.
I also think they make very valid points about Donald Trump and kind of try to look at his psychology. It doesn't really go into the president stuff. It wasn't like a cradle to today biopic. It's like
honestly.
It kind of stops. There are a couple moments that I call kind of Solo a Star Wars story-esque, where they're like, we have to do it. Where like Donald Trump becomes a businessman in the 80s, so he's going to look at the Make America
Ronald
Reagan had something that was vaguely similar to like Make America Great Again, and he looks at it and he's like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. And then his secretary leaves and he's like, actually, and then he starts rubbing his tiny orange hands together. Like, it was a little, I mean, they definitely had to do a couple of the hits for the people.
Of the Han Solo's golden dice
I feel
moments.
like they're like, you know what, you can make a fairly like frank, unbiased Donald Trump movie. We're gonna make you put up fuzzy dice a couple times. How does Trump get his famous slogan? How does he meet Mike Pence for the first time? JD Vance, he touches Baby J.D. Vance wraps his little baby fingers around Donald Trump's hands.
Donald Trump
and he's
is
got little
watching
baby
TV
eyeliner on, you know?
Young upcoming Senator Joe Biden is on the screen, and he's like, that guy would make a horrible president.
Yeah.
There are some of those hokey moments, but like
It mostly
like
avoids
Solo, a Star Wars story, it mostly works, but there's some shit where you roll your eyes at it.
Number 17 is the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. We are chronic Guy Ritchie defenders. This is a decently fun Guy Ritchie movie. This one doesn't really have like a huge presence behind it like some of his do. It's kind of just an action movie about some dudes during World War II with a basic spy thriller plot. It works well enough. It has decent action. It's certainly far from Guy Ritchie's best, but it is.
It's Inglourious Bastards, but less good.
It's a sillier, Inglourious Bastards.
Next we got Longlegs, which is a interesting like horror movie that for a minute seems like the third act is gonna be kind of Silence of the Lambs, like who is this serial killer-esque, and then it turns out Nicolas Cage just wanted to do his Joker performance because somehow at some point, and I think it was kind of like a thing a little bit when Jack Nicholson was around, but especially when Heath Ledger happened, people were like, I really have to, I like being able to play the Joker is the most prestigious thing ever, and it's been decided in Hollywood culture, despite the fact that like I don't understand. But
also, this
he
movie
does his Heath Ledger impression, and then he smashes his head on the table. The whole third act is fucked. The first
the third
two
act's
acts are
awful.
good, and there's a lot of good shooting here and good stuff. The third act is fucked and makes the movie go
Also,
from
this movie had
a masterpiece to pretty much falls apart by the end.
Longlegs had an absurdly good marketing campaign that tricked a bunch of horny teenagers into seeing this at our showing who were all very confused and upset. Number 19 is Piece by Piece. It's the Lego Pharrell biopic. It is a fine biopic. The Lego thing adds almost nothing and was a very strange idea, but it is a perfectly fine movie about the career of an interesting guy in the music industry.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like Rocket Man had the gimmick where it was like a stage play musical, and that new British rock band I never heard of has the monkey guy.
Yeah.
I think it's like, okay, if we just did a Pharrell biopic, where's the hook? Like, Pharrell is famous and big, but it's also a movie and needs a hook. This isn't the Beatles, but even the Beatles are getting a 4-part cinematic universe biopic about the lives of each of them.
Yep.
That, if I'm not mistaken, culminates in a Beatles movie that's going to be a biopic about the Beatles after we see the lives of the other 4 Beatles.
Yep.
So, I mean, everything needs a pull. Music biopics like Bohemian Rhapsody was the last one that they were going to let pass without a gimmick, relatively, and now it's time. Anyways, next we have Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yep.
Deadpool is a terrible character, cringe-inducing character that I hate so much. Ryan Reynolds and team managed to slim it down so where you get like it's occasionally funny, but it's mostly watchable, even for people that can't stand the Reddit-esque humor that is sprinkled throughout. I think Deadpool and the Wolverine is very tolerable. I don't think the story's great.
It's
I think
carried
it was
by all the returning characters.
I think, despite the fact that I think I would have been totally fine with Hugh Jackman never returning. I am also a sucker for Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, surely out of nostalgia for the fact that he's played Wolverine since I was literally 2 years old.
There's an impressive
And now I'm
charm to
26.
Wesley Snipes coming back when the
Wesley
whole reason
Snipes being back.
the whole reason he was such an asshole in
Chris
Blade
Evans.
3 is because he really hated Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, there is a charm. There is some sort of like. There's a lot of deep lore. Like, Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds buried the hatchet somehow after 20 years after Blade 3, and
Ben Affleck's
Wesley Snipes
ex-wife is
came
there.
back. Ben Affleck's ex-wife comes back to diss Ben Affleck. You got both Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Channing Tatum as
Channing
Gambit
Tatum as
from the
Gambit,
Gambit
the
movie that
ultimate-
never got made.
Yeah, like 9 years of Fox leading that man on to play in that before Disney's like, we're not going to do it. And then you even got Daphne Keane coming back as more of an X-23 than like
Chris Evans
the
as
kid.
Human Torch, which was a fun twist.
It was kind of cameo porny. I think it's the least of an actual movie
Yes.
of all of them. But it was a cute farewell to the Fox universe, and I also appreciate that Deadpool didn't say, well, I guess we're in the MCU now. They didn't want to do that. They're like, it's actually probably best to just kind of keep him in the Fox universe and pull out that card when we want to pull out that card, and otherwise he can do his own thing, because
Yeah.
Marvel doesn't want to do our movies, but they understand that, like, you can't put the cat back in the bag with Deadpool, because half of the people who like Deadpool are people in the trailer park who wear Deadpool snapbacks because the Cookie Monster snapback they had faded out. So Aiden.
21 is Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It's an adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2 that's a little clumsy. It's a cute enough children's movie. It has some good action. It is pretty clumsy, and there's a lot of stuff that they're stuck with, the baggage of the human characters, but it is a decent enough kids movie that I don't have a lot to say.
Maxine is the third film in the in the X trilogy. X was meh, Pearl was meh, and Maxine was meh. Mia Goth really tries, and so does Ty West, but I feel like the concept of the trilogy is what has pushed it a lot more than the execution. I don't love these movies, if I'm being honest, but they're also not terrible. They're something that exists.
Number 23 is Monkey Man. It is a John Wick clone. I frankly don't remember a lot about it. It was fine enough. It had decent action. The gimmick is that it's like Indian John Wick. I don't have a lot to say about it, honestly.
Yep. Transformers 1 is a origin story that the producers say, yeah, it's connected to the Michael Bay movies. Really, it's just an animated movie. I think the best part of it, the movie is, like, very fine. I think the problem with the movie is it's, like, too fine. Like, nothing really fucking happens. I thought it was really funny, though, in the race, because they are minors. They're
the miners are taking...
They mine, and then it would be like, Jeffrey Epstein just fucked those miners. And it's like, how the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Chris Hemsworth was fucking awful as Optimus, but the guy who played Megatron was good.
Yeah, the guy who played Megatron was good. Most of the people... I think Scarlett Johansson played Alita 1, and it was like... Some people were there for the paycheck.
25 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This was a controversial one. I really enjoyed this weird monkey version of The Lord of the Rings, this grand, epic monkey adventure. I loved Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I thought it was very fun and interesting. Connor absolutely despised it, so
I don't know if I despised it. I felt like Aiden thought it was a lot better than I thought it was.
I thought it was
I was
interesting.
bored.
I liked the
thought it
grand
was
monkey
ugly.
epic adventure.
But whatever. Next we have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's not as bad as Ghostbusters 2016 or
Not even
Afterlife,
close.
but they're like, let us do the safest Ghostbusters sequel we can possibly do. And they did it, and it was safe, and it took no risks, and it did it the way that is riskless. And it's not very funny, and it's still stripped back of everything that makes Ghostbusters special, which is something Ghostbusters 2 didn't have, nor the other ones, and Ghostbusters will never get back, which is, it's a action movie where everybody in the world takes everything very seriously, despite it being goofy, and Bill Murray knows it, and no one else knows it, and it's goofy. And that's impossible to do, again.
27 is Tarot. Connor didn't see Tarot. It's kind of a bad horror movie, but I really liked the creature design in it. The creatures have some interesting makeup and practical effects behind them. The guy who plays Ned in the Spider-Man movies is a major character, and he sucks. Everyone else is kind of bad too, but he really sucks. But I liked the creature design and some of the practical stuff. It wasn't the worst horror movie of all time, but it was kind of generic and bland outside of the designs.
Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths was a 3-part event. It was bloated being 3 parts. It needed to be cut down because the second part particularly was really boring. The third part was weird. I don't think Crisis on Infinite Earths is a comic I really loved, but at least the comic has like payoff and a culmination of shit.
Yep.
This movie was a bunch of characters we barely know from the Tomorrowverse, a lot of which we'd literally never seen in a movie. And then occasionally they were given 2 or 3 like side things they're able to do. Like Kevin Conroy shows up as Batman in his last show up. Sure, they'll scrape more archival together because they've been saying that as many times as they think they can make money off of it.
They had to make sure that Kill the Justice League wasn't his last one because people were pissed.
And then they instead put him in a subpar.
Time to pass into the realm of the bad movies. Number 29 is Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. It's a fucking Zack Snyder movie. It's bad.
Sorry, do you want to end on a high note or a bad note?
We end on the bad note.
Shots to be bad.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a bad Zack Snyder movie. They complain about wheat the whole time, and it's really fucking boring.
Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. We got Godzilla -1 as a gift to society, so they decided they were going to strike us back. It's probably the worst movie in the MonsterVerse, which I feel like had
medium highs at best.
It just never was good, really. That much. Like the first Godzilla movie is like okay, kind of, mostly because we got Shin Godzilla afterwards. So like as a random Godzilla movie, it's fine, but it's mostly boring. And then every other movie was slop, increasing slop.
Yeah.
And this
is
one
the pinnacle.
was not a change in that.
31, Driveway Dolls. One of the Coen brothers.
I forgot one of the Coen brothers.
We found out that one of the Coen brothers was hard carrying, and it wasn't whichever one directed Driveway Dolls, which was his wife's horny lesbian fan fiction. It's bad.
She wrote the movie because she
came out as bisexual and then wrote the
like
horny
10 years
lesbian
after
fan
they were
fiction.
married. It was kind of weird.
And
it was like also like a
whole
Tarantino movie. Like he was trying to rip himself off, but then he was ripping off Tarantino.
The whole movie is just dildo jokes.
It was a lot of dildo jokes
and very horny for lesbians fetish movie.
I think that it was not very good. Anyways, next up we have Y2K, a movie that was nostalgic for the 2000s, and I remember the 2000s, the early 2000s, and now I understand what people who lived through the 80s have felt like for the last 20 years.
That is something.
Emmy has made us another shot, and I'm going to put this back into my throat, and she's going to have to tell us. We are kind of running out of time on the camera, so I'm going to do this quick.
Oh. Whatever tastes like cough syrup. It's bad.
It's sweet vermouth mixed with Smirnoff red, white, and berry vodka.
Gross.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate. Thanks, Emmy.
Thanks, Emmy.
Thanks, special guest
Y2K.
Emmy.
Oh yeah, Y2K.
Oh,
Very nostalgic for a very bad time in history, and it just had one joke. Oh, I'm sorry. 33 was the 4:30 movie. Kevin Smith made a really boring coming-of-age movie.
There was some sus things in it.
Some very weird, sus, horny moments of one of his protagonists is a repeated sex offender who jerks off in public all the time, and Ken Jeong plays the hammy-ass theater manager. And the whole movie is just references.
In one scene.
The whole movie is just references. There's like a 10-minute section where it's just a bunch of skits of movies. But everything else is just like, wouldn't it suck if they made a movie called like Star Wars The Phantom Menace in 10 years and it sucked? That's the movie.
But what if they made a Book of Boba Fett show? Hellboy the Crooked Man. It's pretty much just nothing of a movie. I think it was mostly killed by its lack of a budget. The guy who played Hellboy wasn't very good, but I think it's mostly like fine.
Number 35 is Absolution. It's the new Liam Neeson movie. This one is definitely not as funny as some of the peaks, like the car bomb movie from last year. This one is just like, it's supposed to be a serious one where they're very sad about his dementia, and it's kind of fucking boring, honestly.
Joker Folie à Deux. Joker turns out to not actually be crazy. He's just an incel, and everyone who liked the first Joker movie is a stupid incel. And
that's the plot.
Lady Gaga wants to have sex with him because women are just groupies that don't have brains. They just want to have sex with good, powerful men. But then when it turns out that he was raped in prison and no longer can be the Joker because he was raped so hard, then he's no longer a valuable man, so he gets stabbed to death by the real Joker. And
it also has
and
20
a lot of
terrible
dumbasses.
music numbers.
For a while, everyone decided that it was stupid. It has like 3, and it's kind of a musical, but it's also not. And people for a minute were like, "This is the worst shit ever," but then there's now a contingent of people that are convinced it's good. I can assure you it is not. And if you think that it's good, perhaps you need to be like the Joker and get gang raped by a bunch of prison guards. I take that back. That was a little far.
No, he's right. I don't take that back.
Well, he said it, not me.
Number 37 is Terrifier 3. It continues the series tradition of being so excessive that it loops around into being boring instead of fun. Like, slasher movies have always had some element. Slasher movies have always had some element of excess where they're like super over the top and gory. Terrifier 3 takes it to such a level and extends it for so long that it somehow loops into being so fucking dull, like never ending. And
I know
the
they
whole
killed
series
a bunch
is just
of kids
miserable.
and yeah, whatever. That movie's like that.
It's the one with the chainsaw scene in the shower.
Alright, time for our first of 3 Sony Marvel movies.
Yep.
Venom: The
The
Last
Sony
Dance
tier.
felt completely unfinished. I don't think they had time.
Yep.
I think
it
they were
sure
like, we
is.
can only really do CGI in 90 minutes, so pick the 90 minutes you like the most. It was fucking horrible.
It's
It was a
fucking not
bad
finished.
conclusion to the Venom trilogy. The first movie they got lucky on and made an okay movie, which is the peak of Sony Marvel universe of mockbusters.
Venom 3
And
doesn't even...
half of the movies came out this year. Venom 3 was god awful, and it was the best of the 3 that came out this year.
Yep, it was very unfinished. Speaking of unfinished, number 39 is Madam Web, which is kind of peak Sony, like, just the fucking stupidest idea ever. Where Madam Web is just some moderate Spider-Man side character who can see the future. And Sony decided that they could make legally distinct Spider-Girls who appear in it and have them in the trailer, and then the whole movie is just boring as shit, but also really funny because it's like the whole movie is a covert Pepsi ad, and they, for some reason, I thought it was for legal reasons that they dance around saying Peter Parker's name because baby Peter Parker is an important character in this, and they're always like, this little baby's gonna have great power and great responsibility, but they can't say his name. I thought that was a legal thing, but then it came out that they could just make Spider-Man movies, like they're contractually allowed to, and they were just being respectful, which makes this movie even fucking weirder. But it's a schizophrenic Spider-Man spin-off that doesn't feature Spider-Man. It's very fucking bizarre. It's one of the most bizarre movies ever made, and kind of incredible for it. Pepsi is the superhero at the end who saves the day.
Yep. And Dakota Fanning becomes blind. Dakota Johnson. Red One is the next movie. The Rock teams up with Chris Evans, and The Rock is Santa Claus's bodyguard, and they need to save Santa Claus. And this movie feels like a Sony Marvel movie, but instead of Venom or Craven,
It's
they
Santa,
have
it's Christmas
Santa
lore.
Claus. I don't even know what to say. It's really torture to watch. It feels like AI created a Christmas movie. I feel like Chris Evans and The Rock possibly might have never stepped on set, and that they're just very lifelike renders of them. It was mostly just incredibly cringe. I don't even understand this one.
Number 41, Kraven the Hunter, the final of the Spider-Man extended universe of mockbusters movies.
We're in the bottom 5.
Kraven the Hunter is substantially less amusing than Madam Web because, as far as it goes, it's more straightforward and less weird. But it is also kind of equally hilarious because every scene is kind of just a mystery box where you can really never tell how a scene's going to play out because it's so badly constructed. And then the big finale is Aaron Taylor Johnson punching a cartoon Rhino Man who somehow looks like he looks worse than the average CGI from like 2009, like the Transformers 1 era. It's kind of an incredible mess. His gay brother is always calling Russell Crowe Papa. It's incredible. It's not as like outwardly funny as Madam Web, but it is just as strange in a lot of ways.
Next is Borderlands. Any of these movies I feel like have a fair argument for the bottom of the year.
Yep.
The problem with Borderlands is that Claptrap is the most annoying character ever. For some reason, when making this movie, they decided Jamie Lee Curtis and Cate Blanchett and Kevin Hart were going to be the trio that could really bring it through, with Jack Black voice modulated to the point you can't tell it's Jack Black playing Claptrap.
Yep.
And they run around and they shoot stuff and they're trying to defeat an evil government. But it's mostly just everybody saying Marvel quips. The main characters are fucking elderly. Kevin Hart makes jokes. It feels like they were going to make a Borderlands movie, and then they said, "Have you seen that movie Jumanji?" I feel like Borderlands is like Jumanji. And they're like, "Okay." And they're like, "Did you know, like, what
Jumanji
if we had
3 comes out next year?
What if
baby?
we had 2 elderly women as our main characters?" And they're like, I fucking guess.
There's
and then,
a disturbing amount of
and then
Jamie
they're
Lee
like,
Curtis
Eli
cleavage
Roth,
in this movie.
Eli Roth, you're the worst character actor. You're the worst director. And he said, oh. And then he got fired for Tim Miller, who was supposed to do the reshoots. Kind of like how Joss Whedon reshot Justice League. So it went from Eli Roth
Also,
to Tim
Borderlands
Miller.
was written by the
And
infamous Alan Smithy.
It was written by Alan Smithy.
Directed by Alan Smithy, starring Alan Smithy.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis's name is actually Alan Smithy, according to the credits on this one.
Number 43 is The Strangers Chapter 1. Much like Hellboy the Crooked Man, it feels like a fan film where it's just people standing around in the woods talking, and it stars one of the Riverdale girls. But somehow, unlike Hellboy the Crooked Man, it came to theaters. The whole movie is shot in the most horrendous day to night ever known to man. No one can act, and it's also boring as hell because it's just like fucking Riverdale and her husband stand around and they're like, wouldn't it be spooky if some evil rednecks showed up? And the evil rednecks show up and smack them with axes and they run away into the day for night forest over and over for like 86 minutes, like whatever the lowest amount of time you can make a movie is. That's the runtime of The Strangers Chapter 1. It feels like it should have been in the DVD bargain bin next to Hellboy the Crooked Man, but somehow even less charming.
In fairness, this movie played in theaters like 6 months ago, so it probably did end up in there. Next off, we have The Crow. The Crow starred Bill Skarsgård as The Crow. He's really sad because his girlfriend is killed, and The movie is nonsensical.
The Suicide
CGI
Boys movie.
heavy. There's
It's
just
a
some of the
Suicide
worst
Boys music
acting
video.
ever. Yeah,
It's a Suicide Boys.
like
movie.
Crow is like hitting black tar heroin and shit in the movie, and he's like, "I'm so sad that I'm a superhero."
I'm like
and
a
then once
sad
in a
boy,
while, it
edgy. I
reminds
want to
you
like
that
write a
it's
Suicide Boys song right now.
Yeah,
Maybe kill some people with guns.
yeah. He starts dropping his rap tracks on SoundCloud. It's really awful. It was just horrendous, to be honest.
And for the big finale, the worst movie of the year, it's Megalopolis, the ultimate fall from grace. Francis Ford Coppola's bizarre, borderline incomprehensible vanity project.
Yeah.
It began production in like the 80s, and every time he pitched it to a studio, they'd be like, "This is fucking terrible, no." And after years of rejection, he started paying for it for himself, and then 9/11 happened, and he canceled it because of 9/11, and somehow it creeped to the finish in 2024 and came out as one of the most bizarre, ugly, expensive,
Pieces of dog shit.
boring,
Terrible acting.
ugly.
Looks terrible.
It's a horrible CGI nightmare where
You know what a lot of the shots look like? They look like the Star Wars prequels, like one for one.
yeah, they look
The
like
problem
they
is,
look
like,
like that-
George Lucas at least shot Attack of the Clones to look kind of weird in 2002, you know?
yeah.
Like, you got the past
ahead of
from
its
the time. But, like,
Every-
Megalopolis, where, like, it's like Adam Driver's looking at the beautiful city, which is, you can visually tell his ass cheeks are touching this damn green screen.
It
It's
looks
awful.
It looks like that infamously bad scene in Attack of the Clones where Obi-Wan and Mace Windu and Yoda are walking down the hallway and they have to walk really slow because there's only this much green
But
screen.
also, like, the hallway just doesn't look right. Like, he didn't line up.
Like the
He didn't
perspective.
shoot it right. He didn't shoot it right. Like, if it was a fan film, you'd be like, yeah, okay, they're close. You probably wouldn't. You'd be like, it looks fine. But
The whole
the
movie
fact that
looks
it was
like
a professionally shot movie and they're just like not quite
There's
walking
just-
on the right vector for
There's
how they're
every
walking.
single thing about it is just weird and wrong. And there's so many people defending it because it's made by the Godfather guy.
No,
even though
it's because
such a
it's
huge
his
piece of
grand
shit.
finale. He doesn't got long left. Francis Ford Coppola's gonna die before he makes another movie.
There's so
This is
many
the one he
fucking-
wanted to make 40 years. This is supposed to be the big Hollywood success story.
Yeah,
and
it's
a
like-
lot of people are invested in the story.
It's supposed to be the story of the man who beat the system, but it turns out that all those Hollywood producers were right, and this is a huge
Yes,
piece
the
of
Hollywood
shit.
producers. I literally got in an argument yesterday on Facebook with somebody about it. They're like, well, maybe the film wasn't made for you. And I said, I really can't fathom who the film was made for. And they said, maybe it was made for no one. The only person who has to like it is Francis Ford Coppola himself. And I said, he sold it. He brought it to theaters. People paid money to see this movie because a bunch of people who
It's
said,
so weird.
it's on my bucket list to star in a Francis Ford Coppola movie, and the
Oh.
sands of time are going down the clock. You know what I'm
There's so
saying? Like,
many
he doesn't got much
fucking-
time left. So
like,
you got
you
a
could
bunch of
speak
great
endlessly,
actors or
like-
famous actors, just anybody.
Adam
really.
Driver's life dream, like the Russian satellite subplot where Dennis Hopper gets
He's
crushed.
Jesus and Superman wrapped into one, and all he wants to do is make a giant gold flower
Adam Driver
made
makes
of CGI.
Adam Driver makes a big gold CGI flower covered in conveyor belts.
It's
and
like
Jurassic
real
World
life
bubble
characters
cars.
put into the environment of Polar Express. Like if Robert Zemeckis didn't decide to
Adam-
CGI over everything.
Adam Driver builds a golden flower covered in Jurassic World bubble cars, and Shia LaBeouf is playing. Shia LaBeouf's doing his big Joker moment, but his testicles keep falling out of his toga.
Bro, you know what fucks
And there's
me
a
up,
bizarre
though?
subplot where Adam Driver gets deep faked into fucking a child. And
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
so fucking. It's such a
Yep.
weird fucking movie.
Oh, and then Adam Driver's kid was either going to be named, like, Sonny or Francis Ford Coppola. He's like, my child is prophesied
there's
to be the
also
biggest, best
the
artist
part-
of all time.
the part
The
where
best filmmaker. She
Shia
created
LaBeouf-
The Godfather and a bunch of movies we don't mention, like Jack.
Shia LaBeouf hires a child assassin to shoot Adam Driver in the face.
I forgot!
Adam
The
Driver.
bow and arrow, the little bow and
The little bow and arrow. Adam Driver's eye gets poked out by the gun, and then he gets brought back to life. And there's like 4 scenes where he has a golden hole where his eye
This
is.
isn't us trying to like crucify Francis Ford Coppola. I genuinely think this is the worst movie of the year. I think it's honestly
It's
like
not- it's-
once you factor in Francis Ford Coppola, I think it genuinely has.
It's an incredible fall from grace on top of
the
being
fact.
terrible
I
itself.
think the other thing is the fact that there's dick riders who are like really trying to. And then I asked the
But-
guy. I said, if you were removed of all ego and understanding that this is a Francis Ford Coppola movie, would you walk out of the theater after 15 minutes like I would have? And the guy said, okay, buddy, fuck you, bitch. And then I reported him to Facebook, and
Adam-
Facebook gave me a thing that said he was banned.
Adam
he was put on
Driver.
like a 2-month
Adam
suspension.
Driver gets a golden eye, and then after 2 scenes, Francis Ford Coppola said that's too expensive to animate. Just put his normal eye back,
Right.
and the movie just continues.
And then there's like a
Everything-
bunch of sex scenes with a bunch of young girls, and then also can we mention
Francis
that
Ford
Francis Ford
Coppola starts
Coppola was going
going-
around set and he's like,
Groping the 18
it's not sexual harassment. There's no intimacy coordinator to call me out. And honestly, like, I hired you, so you should probably suck my dick like we did in the 70s. Like, it turns out Francis Ford Coppola made 2 good movies like 50 years ago.
Yep.
3 if you count Godfather Part 2 and Godfather Part 1. He made 2 good Godfather movies, Apocalypse Now, and then after that he could have died
And
not
arguably-
made The Offspring that also makes shitty movies.
Apocalypse Now is
That's a little harsh, but
It's a
like,
bit of a
okay,
mess.
he's like a little jerker. He was
Apocalypse
fingering,
Now is kind of carried by the documentary his wife made that he
Oh, 100%.
probably didn't want to be released
Well,
because
okay,
it makes him look like a
let's
moron.
be
Apocalypse
honest.
Now is good,
Apocalypse
but
Now.
Hearts of Darkness is the better half.
You know,
of
the problem with
Apocalypse
Apocalypse Now is I would recommend Apocalypse Now, and I'd say watch Apocalypse Now now. The problem is Francis Ford Coppola made a pretentious cut, and then they said that's really pretentious and not as good as the theatrical cut, which you had nothing to do with. And he said, okay, well then I'll make a second cut. And then he made a second cut, and they're like, yeah, it still sucks. Still sucks. It actually sucks worse, somehow. You cut out the only things that you added that we thought were good. It sucks worse. And he says, oh. And he's like, well, I can recut Godfather Part 3, and they're like, it still sucks. It sucks, dude. Like, maybe you just, like, I don't know how you did it. Like,
Yeah,
maybe
it's-
50 years ago, there were, like, 3 years of brilliance. Did you fall? Did you have a fall? Were you addicted to black tar heroin? Like, what went wrong?
like The Crow.
Somehow you're just so fucking pretentious. And
Yeah.
you decide, well, I'm 70, what are they going to do? Cancel me? I'll just grow up a couple 18-year-olds.
Yeah,
It's Hollywood,
it's,
baby. I was doing this to Michelle Pfeiffer back in the day.
It's Megalopolis is one of the most bizarre Hollywood failure stories. of
I think the
the
thing
man
is,
who tried to beat the system and made one of the worst movies ever.
there's the tale
Borderline incomprehensible. He just the hubris of Francis Ford Coppola to say all those people who told me this sucks were wrong for 40 years.
and then it
and I'm gonna
comes
make
out
it,
and
and it comes
everybody
out and it's
thinks it
fucking dog
sucks,
shit.
but there are just dick riders. There are just dick riders out there that claim it's good. Like, I really
It's
genuinely have watched this movie, and
It's somehow worse. It's the worst thing of the year. Even worse than the bad Sony fake
it
Spider-Man
makes me
movies.
angry that people defend it because
Bad than the
I don't know
shitty
if they
Crow
were
movie.
tricked into it or
I
if
think
they're lying.
I think it's all cope. I think it's just Francis Ford Coppola made one of the best movies ever, so this must be secretly good.
No, I think it's 100% the backstory because these same people were shitting on Francis Ford Coppola for the last 30 years. This is supposed to be the cope.
Yeah.
Not only is it his comeback, he's 1,000 years old. It's his comeback. He didn't grope people. You're just being woke.
Most of the time I see
And-
people defending this movie, the cope is like
I asked them genuinely, how do you think this?
like
What's good?
most of the time, like if you
They're
read
like, you don't get it.
When the movie came out, there's a
don't-
bunch of letterbox reviews, and I was reading them, and the 5-star reviews would almost universally be like, I don't get it, but I can tell it's super deep and like super intelligent, and I think I need to watch it like 4 more times to understand. When the reality is it just fucking sucks, and people are coping and hoping that this big like man beats the system story works out because the backstory is interesting.
Because 40 years
But
he
it
tried to
actually
get this
sucks.
damn movie made. He's the Godfather guy. He knows what he's doing.
No,
Everybody
it just
said
sucks.
it sucked. Everybody said,
And they were
don't
right.
make this movie.
They were
Finally, he says, fuck the system. I'm going to self-produce it. He puts it out at Cannes. People still said it sucks. No one wants to distribute the thing because it sucks so much ass. And he's asking to like just break even so his work can see the world. They say you can have all the profits. You just got to do it. And finally, Lionsgate's like, fine. We could probably trick people into seeing it. And then it came out and everybody thought it fucking sucked and it flopped harder than anything.
It sucked.
But
It sucked
in
bad.
20 years, people are going to understand it. There's going to be an essay that's going to explain it so well.
Yeah,
that
there's
after you read this
Nando
essay,
versus movies
it's
is
going
gonna
to
make
click in your head.
Vulture's
Jeremy
gonna write
Johns.
an essay.
Jeremy Johns is going to team up with Vulture.
Nando versus
What
movie.
Culture, Looper,
Cracked.com.
Watch Mojo,
Top 10 misunderstood movies of
Comic
the
Book
2000
Resources.
decade, millennia.
Roger Ebert.
Top 10 misunderstood
.com.
movies, and number 1 on the top 10 misunderstood movies will be Megalopolis.
It's so misunderstood, we here at Misunderstood Movies couldn't even understand it ourselves. It sucked ass, but we know that secretly it's genius.
It's bad. It's a nightmare.
Anyways, I think it's safe to say that that was 2024. In 2025, there's a lot more movies coming
Yeah.
out. I think 2025 will not be as horrendous as 2024.
2025 looks a lot better.
I think there's going to be a lot of like mid-ass movies,
If
which
we
is
had
less
more-
entertaining to talk about in this series. If you're watching this after watching the 2025 video, you may confirm or deny that we talked about a bunch of mid-ass movies like the Thunderbolts or Captain America. But I am sure there will be some stinkers like there are every year.
If we had more
which is
camera
what I
badgery,
truly
I'd
like to
run
talk
through the
about.
2025 slate. But the
I think the
battery's dying,
2025 slate is pretty simple. There's a lot of superhero movies. There's a
Yeah.
Jurassic Park movie starring Scarlett Johansson.
so the Wolfman.
What I think they tried to do with 2025, I think the Hollywood thesis of 2025 is, what about 2023 but even more sequels and movies that people are like, I've seen enough about that. Like 2024 was like, there wasn't many sequels. There was a lot of people just like didn't like what came out. There was some subpar stuff. 2025 is like, you're really gonna try it with Jurassic Park 8, huh? We're gonna see if lightning can strike for the third time out
fourth
of
time,
8,
maybe.
out of like 5 or 6 movies. Like, it's like, let's just unceremoniously dump a sequel every week into theaters is what 2025 looks like. And I think things like Superman looks good. I'm sure the
Superman looks
Fantastic Four movie's gonna be moderately fine, or perhaps if we're lucky it'll be dog shit and they'll just cancel the MCU outright because it's kind of like the Hail Mary.
Yep.
Captain America looks fucking stupid.
Doomsday Avenger, that comes out
That's
2026.
2026. Yeah.
We don't have enough time to go through the whole 2025 slate, but we went through it a couple days ago, and it's interesting to say.
There's a lot of shit where you're like, oh, that's happening, that's a real thing. I think I remember hearing about that in 2021 as some random article that I forgot about because I thought it was clickbait.
Den of Thieves 2. It's gonna be a classic.
That's our first movie.
Flight Risk, directed by Mel Gibson. Looks
Love it.
fun. Star Trek movie. First one in.
Oh, the Michelle Yeoh one. That's
Wolfman.
either going to be terrible or awful.
Let's see. We got Hard Eyes, slasher movie. Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, new Bridget Jones movie. I know you're excited for that.
I don't even I've heard the name.
Bridget Jones' Diary 6. Captain America Brave New Worlds. The Monkey by Osgood Perkins of Long Legs
That looks
fame.
kind of like Final Destination.
The trailer makes that movie look good, but also that the trailers made Long Legs look much better than it ended up being. So
Yeah, it's the guy who made Barbarian, though, which was okay, and produced by James Wan.
there's
so
a Looney Tunes movie coming out from Ketchup Entertainment,
Yeah.
Warner Bros.
Ooh.
Pictures.
and it's coming to theaters, mind you.
Mickey 17 looks very, very, very good.
Yep.
Novocaine, another John Wick clone.
Yeah.
Snow White, know you're hyped for that one.
Skip.
Let's see, Minecraft. Minecraft looks exciting.
I'm sure that'll be near the bottom.
The Accountant 2 starring Ben Affleck. Don't know
I don't
why
think I
that's
saw
coming
The Accountant one.
out. I haven't either. Thunderbolts Asterisk. Gonna be a movie.
Cool.
Final Destination 6. I'm hyped for that. I don't think anyone else in the world is.
I'm down.
Mission Impossible 9, I'm sure will be very good.
Yep.
Karate Kids reboot with Jackie Chan and
I
Ralph
love
Macchio.
Jackie Chan.
Hopefully
I'm
it's
fine with it. I mean, if it has Jackie Chan, I'll accept it.
good. From the world of John Wick Ballerina, it'll probably be fine.
It's a John Wick clone by the guys who made John Wick. I'm sure
28
it'll be
years
fine.
later, I don't know what to make of that. M3 GAN 2, who cares?
Yeah.
Jurassic World Rebirth.
Yeah.
Untitled,
Rebirth. It's been 2 years. You cannot be rebirth.
untitled Trey Parker film. Who knows? Superman looks
Wait,
good.
is it called Jurassic World Rebirth or Park?
Jurassic World Rebirth.
They gotta stop with the Jurassic World.
Untitled, I Know What You Did Last Summer sequel. Fantastic Four First Steps. The Naked Gun, starring Liam Neeson for some reason.
I'll probably watch it.
Freakier Friday, I know you're very excited for that. You're famously a
The
big
fuck for
Freaky
the-
Friday
I mean,
fan.
maybe it'd be interesting.
Nobody 2 will probably be fine like the first one. Untitled Insidious sequel. Conjuring Last Rites.
Pass.
Downtown Abbey, a New Era
Pass.
sequel. The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's Bride of
It's gonna
Frankenstein.
Drop.
Saw 11, I'm hyped. Hyped for Saw 11.
Saw.
Tron Ares, starring Jared Leto.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Chef's kiss. I'm so
we
gassed.
finally get some real Kino.
Another Tron failure. They've never hit on that franchise. Like from a success standpoint, it's never
been nothing but
been a
flops.
critical or commercial success.
Mortal Kombat 2.
Cool.
The first one
That
came
is
out in like
shocking.
2018. I don't know how.
It was 2020. It was during COVID, but
feels like
it
it's been
feels like
forever.
it's been 20 years. The fact that it took them 4 years for a movie like the Mortal Kombat movies should be cleanly coming out every 2 years. Like there is no plot, there is no writing time. You have stuntmen fight while guys say we need to stop the Mortal Kombat.
Predator Badlands by the guy who made Prey. Hopefully
Is that the
it's
one
good.
that's like the ninja, or is it like
Seven
just a normal
premise.
Predator movie?
In the future, Predators on an alien world.
Oh, future.
It's a future one.
I liked Prey.
Running Man reboot by Edgar Wright. I like Edgar Wright. The Running Man is something. Now You See Me 3. I could not be more excited. I'm so fucking hyped. It's gonna be Kino.
Is that you mean trash? Or
Now You See Me 2 is the greatest movie ever made. Stand by that.
It's also been long enough.
Avatar 3, I'm sure will be an incredible technical achievement.
They're
And
always like,
it's
wow,
fun.
this movie's amazing, and then I forget about it 6 months later.
Yep. And the SpongeBob movie 6 or whatever the hell.
Five,
Five, six.
We watched the superhero one. I think they made one during COVID. We didn't watch. So this would be
It is
five.
the fourth
I think.
theatrical film.
Wait, there's the first one, then there's the
There's the original one. There's
superheroes,
Sponge Out of Water, which
and
is
then there's
the
the
superhero
third one we didn't watch,
And
then
the third
this
one is Sponge on the Run, which
Yeah,
had Snoop
yeah,
Dogg and
so-
Aquafina in it,
of course.
and Keanu Reeves, and
I'll
Danny
watch. We'll
Trejo,
probably watch this fifth one.
and Reggie Watts,
fourth
who I
one.
think is a football player or something.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Oh no, he's a beatboxer. Okay.
Wait, sure. I've heard the name. Apparently, he's really good at his craft because I've heard the name. I don't know who that is.
And the new SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob goes to the depths of the ocean to fight the Flying Dutchman. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Why do they make movies?
Avatar's the
like
big final release of the year.
that? How the fuck is our camera still running? You said it was
It's
out of
chugging
batteries
along.
like 10 minutes ago. Well,
Mortal Kombat 2 starring Carl Urban. Pipe.
Carl Urban's the star.
He's coming
not
back.
The guy who played Scorpion in the last one.
He was in the first one, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
He played...
Johnny Cage, because they couldn't get Van Damme.
Yeah.
Or if Van Damme was too old or whatever.
Tron Ares is going to be...
I think it'll probably look cool. They'll probably put a lot of money to try to make Tron work for the third time. I like how everyone knows what Tron is. Everybody's fascinated with Tron. Somehow the movies always fail.
The movies
They're
have always been...
not that good. They're like okay, but interesting
I mean, the thing
looking.
is, every single Tron movie has the same upside and the same downside of they're all boring, generic movies that are way too long, but they're all incredibly sophisticated and ahead of their time as far as visual effects go.
They look cool.
And also the second one had the Daft Punk soundtrack.
This one's a 9 Inch Nails soundtrack. They wanted to keep like getting an actual artist to just dead ass make an album for it. So they got 9 Inch Nails to make a soundtrack for it.
That is a horrendous idea.
It's a different
Here's
take.
to 2025.
Alright, so here's to 2025.
At least we get to see the end of Mission Impossible.
Yeah, some of these movies are... Fast 11 is not yet on the release
It was
calendar. It's been like 4 years.
Fast 10 was so terrible that they've canceled
What if they just don't ever do it again and like the movie just ends with maybe or maybe
I like
not,
all the
they
talk
stop.
about Fast X where like
They were acting like the next movie.
they were ready for the next
exactly
one to
early.
come out like immediately, but Fast X was so terrible that they've basically put it on indefinite hiatus.
Well, that's the
And
same
there was,
thing
like-
with Spider-Man.
There was like interviews where they're like, we're figuring out what to do with Fast 11, and we're like considering cutting out Jason Momoa because his character was so bad and poorly received that we're just gonna replace him with a different character and just not have him be in the movie, even though he's the main villain of the duology.
and it was like a fucking two-parter. Like they were confident that Fast 10 was.
Fast X.
Fast 10 was gonna be the last, and they're like, "Come on, let's make it a two-parter, though." And then nobody liked Fast X, and it was like by far the worst.
They quickly.
received and worst fucking.
It's incredible
selling.
how quickly they pissed away all the goodwill of Furious 7, the greatest movie of all time.
I think the problem with Fast and Furious is they didn't piss all their goodwill away fast enough, and that's what put them in the situation they're in today.
Yeah, Furious 7 was the finale. It'd be incredible, but if they did whatever the hell Fate of the Furious
Fast 8 was like, okay, we're gonna just kind of do one because we don't really know what to do. And then Fast 9, they said we don't really know what to do, so we're just gonna do one. And then Fast 10's like, okay, we're gonna just do one, but we need a good villain, so I guess Jason Momoa is the Joker.
Yeah. People playing the Joker is kind of a death sentence for movie franchises. Every movie franchise in the modern era ends with someone trying to play the Joker and spectacularly failing.
It's a zombie.
And then you end up with Fast X or fucking...
This is our new star. It's a zombie.